Welcome to today's episode of What to Say and How to Say It, the podcast to help you fix your marriage. I'm Shy Lewis. I'm here with Nina Roesner. Our mission is to help you, Christian married man or woman, navigate conflict and build connection so you can have a thriving marriage. All right, so we are continuing our series on narcissism. And today we're going to explore how to heal if you've ever been in one of these relationships, what that looks like, how greater impact feels about it, some things that, we think might help. And then hopefully you'll have some good takeaways that, you can apply at home. All right, so welcome, Nina. I am excited about this topic.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I like the part when we get into, well, how do you heal from this? What do you do? Because, I think God allows our circumstances so that we can grow into the people that he wants us to be. There's a purpose for this pain and this suffering. It's not for no reason. So will we embrace that and then move forward with him? That's our choice. I think we have agency and can say yes to that, even if it's hard, because what you're doing now is hard. So choose a different hard that can actually make your life better. So that's my recommendation today.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. All right, so I just want to put out there we're not, mental health professionals, so we want to focus on your behavior and how you can show up. And also, before we get started, I want to direct you to our website, greaterimpactwives.org. This is where you can find a free PDF called 5 Tools for How to Stop Walking on Eggshells. We also have a marriage assessment for you to download and take a look at where things are. If you need help, reach out to someone and we'll point you in the right direction. All right, so let's jump into this topic around healing. So we went into the behaviors of narcissism last week, and we kind of explored, some typical symptoms of this personality type, and it can include things like emotional dysregulation, gaslighting, projecting, lack of empathy. I think there's quite a bit here that, indicate, the person's unhealthy or there's some just behaviors that need to sort of be explored or modified. So we know that, experts say that if you're exposed to this behavior for a prolonged period of time, it can start to affect your mental health. It can even affect your physical health. And a lot of times it's because your reality has been distorted. You don't know what's up, what's down. Things can kind of get blurred. The truth is subjective. And healing can be just such an obscure thing. You don't know where to start. I know that 20 years ago, we weren't really discussing this so much, but it seems like now that's the thing that everybody's discussing. We all think we're experts on this topic, just because there's a lot of information now available to us. But one thing that is true is that it does take a toll on you. I think no matter who your resource is, who your source is, they all kind of align with, yeah, this can take a toll on you. So, Nina, what are your thoughts around healing? Is it even possible, in your opinion, to heal from this kind of interaction?
Yeah, I think everything is possible with God. And I think most of this is a spiritual experience for people. Uh,
Mm.
when we lose our identity, we're not in Christ in that space because we forget who we are. And it's understandable, right? There's no judgment in this, but we forget who we are and we start believing the stuff that's around us. And what's interesting is too is that I believe that the other person that's behaving this way, there's a spiritual thing going on for them too. And even if they're Christian, they might be oppressed because Christians can't be possessed, but they
Right.
might be oppressed, right? And so then their behavior is directed by the enemy. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of attempts at control, and there's a lot of just aberrant behavior that's not useful and not healthy in a relationship. So when you find yourself in that and it stays that way for a long period of time, it can wear you out if you do not have an anchor to healthy. Meaning, if the only input you have or the most input you have is coming from an unhealthy source, right? And then on
Mhm.
top of that, if you're spending your time complaining about this, you're just deeply rooting all of this in your brain as this is my existence and how bad is this? Oh, poor me. And the problem with that is, and I'm not perfect at this, right? Like I've done this journey myself, and it just drags you down, and you get so upside down that you can't tell what reality is.
Mhm.
You don't believe the things about yourself that used to be so very true. You've kind of lost yourself.
Mhm.
And so what do you do with that? When you're so lost, it really helps to get away from the stimulation. Visit
Mhm.
a friend for a week or two, go to the beach with someone, and take a respite, get away from the source and get grounded again so that you can re-identify with God, who is our source. And I think he allows these circumstances so that we can really deepen our identity with him and then stand firm in that with the other person, which when we do that, then forces change. So when we change, when we heal, and we're in that same environment again, the environment starts to change because it has to. We're not a victim anymore of it. So healing is crucial for all of this.
Yeah. And the thing I like about this is that the thing you said that it's possible. So many experts will say, well, if you have this type of personality in your life, just cut them off, detach, you know, go no contact. And for a lot of us, it's just not possible. The person may be a parent, it may be a child, I mean, a spouse, and you may decide you want to stay married and you just need to figure out how to heal and how to show up different in the situation. So I love that you're taking the approach, or you recommend taking the approach of doing what you can do,
Mm-hmm.
to show up differently and not become the victim. So, now I know that a lot of times we talk about surrendering and this thing that, we can refer to as radical acceptance, for instance. Um, a lot of times the toll that it's taking on us is because we are in somebody else's yard. We are trying to do the work for them. We are exhausting ourselves with trying to control the situation from our side of the street, and that's not healthy either. So, what are your thoughts around that becoming a thing where we can help the healing process along by just accepting things for what they are, accepting people for where they are and who they are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's that's such a big deal because if we're not doing that, we're not living in the present, and we're also basically refusing reality. And I think we're under a spirit of deception at that point, where we're choosing to believe that this other person is someone that they have not shown up to be. Like their behavior is pretty consistent. And if we lived in reality, we would see that and we would accept that. And then we would respond maturely accordingly. We wouldn't be taking it personally. We would just be living in that, accepting it. And that doesn't mean that we're going to say, okay, I have no boundaries. It's just my lot in life, to be victimized here. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying, look at what you have, look at what is real here, instead of trying to create something by trying to manipulate or being hurt all the time because they're not living up to the expectations that you have, and you've got a bunch of them.
Mhm.
And when people are not, when people show you who they are repeatedly and you refuse to accept that, that's kind of on you. And you can't really move forward as long as you stay stuck in that space.
Absolutely. Another thing that is helpful in your healing process is not taking things personally. I also think this is kind of a slippery slope because chances are the person you're dealing with is someone you love or and someone you believe loves you. And so their words can deeply affect you or their opinions can deeply affect you. And perhaps those opinions and words aren't even true. And so I
Mhm.
think it's important to have an understanding that this really isn't about you. Kind of to your point, this is spiritual and you kind of need to see it for that and not internalize a lot of that, venom, for lack of a better word, that comes your way.
Yeah, I think venom is a good word for it. Yeah, that we one of the names that Satan has in the Bible is the accuser. And the pattern that he facilitates, the common pattern is, well, you think this, or you're that, or you always, or you never. And then we react defensively because we take it personally because it feels like it was aimed at us. And it was. But hold up a second, because most of the time, and by the way, nobody always or never does anything. That we're not that consistent. So that's not even true. But when you hear that kind of language, that's accusation, which is the enemy's calling card. So if we respond to accusation with defensiveness because we've received that word in us as true, that's the first thing is don't receive that, right? And then observe that, because what's probably happening is that person is being influenced. There's something in their life around this, and they're trying to shove that on you because they know it's wrong. That's called projection. That's a thing that people do. When they accuse somebody of something, they're usually the ones doing it. Not always, but it's a common thing. And my guess is you've seen some of that too in your life.
Yeah.
And when you say it's human nature to get defensive back,
hmm
yeah, I think so too. I think that's a cycle we get caught up in. But I want to say that's Satan's cycle, that taking it personally, taking it in, that's part of the cycle. And then we do the same thing
hmm
that our partner just did. So we're participating in the enemy's cycle. So when we choose not to participate, when we say something like, you know what, you can think that if you want to, I think we should table this and you leave the room, that you don't return evil for evil, right? So if you
Right.
don't participate in that, it takes the wind out of the sails of the enemy. He has nothing to fight with here. And I'm not talking about your spouse. I'm talking about the demonic that is influencing, because that stuff is real. And if you don't believe that, then you don't believe the Bible. And
Right.
sorry to be so direct about it, but this stuff is real. And the motive of the enemy is to divide us. And he does that in the family. So if we're not going to acknowledge that we have an enemy that is real and trying to circumvent God's plan for us, which is unity and his gospel to the world through our lives, then we're kind of we don't have any weapons. We don't have any way of navigating this, because if we just blame our spouse and think they're the ones that need to change, we're not accepting reality, because reality is here's an accusation and Satan is the accuser. Just saying.
No, that's good. Your spouse isn't your enemy. That's what I'm hearing. You have
Yeah.
a common enemy, and somebody needs to be aware of that in the moment, which is
Yep.
hard, but it's the truth. What you're hearing out of the person you love or what you're giving to the person you love isn't always from Jesus.
Yep.
It's not always even factual.
Yep.
Like, we can be tools, in the enemy's hand or in the Lord's hand, So I
Yeah.
think it's important to recognize that.
I think that's absolutely true. And I know for a fact that it happens and you're not even aware of it. Uh,
hmm
I was running one time and I was listening to my son's music. And this is back when he had a band, and now he's doing other stuff in the music industry. But right then he was in a band. I was listening to his music because it was high tempo. It was great to run to. And I had this perception that it was all in minor key. And I was I was really starting to worry about him and then thinking negative thoughts about him and then over interpreting some of his behaviors. He was probably 18 years old at the time. And so when I got back, I went to him and I said, I'm really concerned about your music. He's like, and so I brought up, it's all in minor key. He's like, no, it's not, Mom. None of it's in minor key. I'm like, what? And he's like, no, it's not. And he played it for me, a couple of the songs, and I heard it differently.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that weird?
That's weird.
It is
Yeah.
absolutely. But what happened was I was being influenced by the enemy and didn't even know that, because I think very highly of my son. I absolutely do. I'm one of his number one fans. And he's married now, so he's got a better one. So there's that. But it's astonishing to me how easily that slipped in there and I couldn't tell.
Mhm.
And, I didn't react big time to it, but I just communicated, I'm concerned. And then he showed me what was true and I could see it. It's really, he's wily, that the enemy is good at what he does. And what
Mhm.
he does is evil, and we cannot trust that.
Yes. And the thing about deception, to your point earlier, is it can just be like a hair off of the truth. So
Mm-hmm.
it can feel like the truth. It can, appear like the truth. But any deviation from the truth is a lie.
Yes.
So I think that's also where we get caught up, is that we're close, but we're not quite there. And then we want to believe whatever that thing is. And we convince ourselves that it's all right. But it's like you only need a crack. And then,
Ugh.
you know,
Yes.
off we go.
Yeah. No kidding. Yeah. You're absolutely right. I hate that.
All right. So the next point I think that's important when you're healing is grieving. I think that sometimes we don't allow ourselves to process things in a way that we let go of an idea or a narrative or a future we envisioned, or maybe the person we married isn't that person we thought they were. And we kind of need to like let go of all of that. And, as we're accepting and as we're surrendering and not taking things personally, we're also like kind of letting go of things and inviting, I think, God into the picture and saying, hey, I'm sad about this.
Yeah.
And, I need help and I need you to help heal my heart around this. So what are your thoughts around
Well,
that?
it's funny that you brought that up in that way. Yeah, I was reading the Connection Steps booklet because we're gonna do a children's book, and I want to get it tidied up and submit it to a publisher. And one of the steps is missing. It's in the manual, but it's not in the booklet. And that step, it's the last one. It's let go and let God. And to your point, the phrase let go is, if we're able to do that, we are healed. That's the result of healing, is we've let go of it. We're not holding on to this thing that was painful. There's no bitterness, resentment, unforgiveness. There's no worry, stress, anxiety, sad feelings around it. And we've let go of it. We're done with it. That it's just over, because it's not, we opened our hands and it flew away, and God's got it. The end. That's what healing is like. And yeah, there's a process to that, and it doesn't happen overnight. But you're healed when that topic or that event comes up and you have zero reaction to it, no emotionality whatsoever. That's what healing is. It's a letting go and an absence of negative feelings. And then further past that, and this is going to sound crazy, so hang on, but
Mhm.
further past that is gratitude for what we
Mhm.
went through, because God reveals what he did in our character as a result of allowing that hurt in the first place. It's astonishing. And if we can hang on to that knowing that that's out there, then we can suffer well. We can endure better. We can, like, Lord, help me forgive. What am I hanging on to? Why am I like this? What's in the way of me giving this to you to sort? Why am I still trying to control, and why is this still hurt? Like, He wants us to get over this. That's why he sent Jesus. One of the reasons was to heal the brokenhearted, to set the captives free, bring sight to the blind. Life abundant comes with that after that. So it's an astonishing process. It's worth going through. It's a little painful, hello, especially at the beginning.
Mm.
It's so
Yeah.
worth it. So worth it because it hurts now. Wouldn't you rather hurt in a way that's purposeful, that gets you through it and heals this? I just love it.
Yeah. And this gives you hope. I love that you threw gratitude in there because, I hadn't included that. So thank you. But it does bring hope that you can actually get to the other side of grief. Because I think sometimes grief can feel so overwhelming. We don't think we're gonna survive it, or
Mhm.
we don't know where it's taking us. And to hear, oh, you get to a place where you're actually grateful you went through that is extremely encouraging.
Mhm.
So, I love that. And I absolutely agree that is true and it is definitely possible. So,
I don't want to dismiss people that they're like, yeah, I lost my spouse and you want me to have joy over that. Sure. Be grateful. Like,
mm,
no, like, of course you miss them, of course you do. And at the same time, there's good going to come from this because that's who God is. So, yes, grieve well. And you might take 20 years to grieve it, but God's going to do healing in the middle of that. And it's okay to miss them, you know? Like you enjoyed their company and okay, they're not here anymore. We're not dismissing any of that. That's reality. But look at how much stronger he's made you, for some of the other things you've grieved. It's an outcome that he wants for us is strength and dignity. So we got to be on that journey.
I love it. Love it. Okay, another thing I think that it's helpful when you're trying to heal is having a support system, having people around you that can remind you of who you are. If you've lost yourself, to your point, sometimes that might mean a family member, a close friend. It might mean a coach. We have wonderful, wonderful coaches here at Greater Impact, who know the word, who love the Lord, and can walk with you through something like this. And I think that is just so important because you're distorted and upside down, and just hearing, for a time, you know, what God says and who you are, and just being reminded of it, um, really helps rewire your brain in the right direction. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah. And I think we have to be wise about who that support system is.
That's
You
true.
know, if you're struggling in your marriage and you're hanging out with a bunch of divorced women, that's not going to help you. You need to find people that have toughed it out if that's your goal, which it should be, because that's, let no man separate what I've put together. That's what God says. So you want to get support from people that have been there, done that. So those are the old ladies at your church that have been married for 50 years, because they will, if you ask them, what's the secret to, you being married for 40, 50 years, and they'll say things like, I'm a saint. And the reason they do that is because they've endured a lot and they know how to, suffer well. And then a lot of them know how to call their husband up to a higher level of being, which is,
Mm,
iron sharpening iron relationships. That is just, I think, the most beautiful opportunity in marriage.
yeah. Yeah. And they have a sense of humor about it. And I think that's also a good indication of
Mm-hmm.
they've done the work and now they can tell good stories about it. So
Yep. Yep.
all right. Taking responsibility. Let's talk about that. So I think when we have put so much energy into the wrong direction, things we can't control, there's an opportunity that exists to redirect that to our own yard. And that can look like self-care. It can look like therapy. We have a wonderful inner healing process we do with our clients that also kind of digs into those wounds, and kind of explores what God says, and really takes you on a path of healing. filling your joy bucket. That's another thing we're big on, finding things that bring you joy. There's so much you can do besides focusing on the problem.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
any thoughts around taking
Yeah.
responsibility?
I think it ties into the first thing with radical acceptance, because we have to accept something really hard in this space. And sometimes we can't at first because we're so discouraged. But the truth is that nobody's going to change your life but you. There's nobody coming. No one's on their way to rescue you. Jesus has been here this whole time, and you can't hear him through your pain and through some of the negative thoughts that you've been having. But the only one that's going to fix your situation is you. So take responsibility for what you've got and set about making the best of it. You know, following the Lord in spaces that may seem crazy, but that's what we're dealing with, right? Like he took the walls of Jericho down with shouting and banging of pots. Like, you know, and we have a magic book that we believe in, right? Like spiritual stuff. It's all, but until we have agency over it, we can't really do any of this stuff. We're always looking to somebody else to fix it for us. And I'm sorry to tell you this, nobody's coming. There's nobody that's going to rescue you, but the Jesus in you will rescue you if you will show up and take responsibility for that.
Yeah, definitely. And to that point, I think the word of God, which is the last tip here, I think that's going to be also key in this healing journey because the word of God is our anchor. It is the thing that does not change. It's going to help with rebuilding your identity. It's going to help remind you of who you are. It's going to help you when you're triggered. If you're in that relationship and it's not going anywhere, you're going to have to be pretty solid with the truth and allow God to minister to your spirit and your heart through his word. Because I tell you, there have been times where I have read a verse that I've read a million times, and I'll see something different in that verse that applies to the thing I'm going through in that moment.
Mhm.
And it's just always amazing how he just shows up for us like that. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's
Me too. Right. Has that always been in there?
right.
Is that there last year when I read this? What? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He's good. Okay. I want to shift to the next segment. It's called the question of the day. This is where we pull up a question from one of our clients from over the years that we think might help our audience. So, Nina, there's a client that writes, is there a time where you do not share a boundary because your husband is unable to properly deal with it? If it's something you really need to do for yourself, but maybe he can't handle it in a way that's healthy, is this considered disrespect? Are you lying? Um, what if withholding that information prevents or causes, I think is what she meant, causes more damage in the marriage?
Well, we have a perception that conflict equals damage, right?
Mhm.
Can. But and the interesting thing is she said, do you share a boundary? And it's like, well, the boundary's for you, right? So you're going to go about doing something. And no, you shouldn't lie about it. The truth is what sets you free. So if your husband can't handle the truth, what a great opportunity for you to have the teaching of kindness on your tongue as you deal with this. Let's say you're going to do 3 days on a horse riding trip. Um, my husband fully supports these, by the way, but let's say he didn't, right? And I got 3 days, and what am I going to do? Am I going to lie about that? Am I going to say I'm, going to a conference, or like what it's, well, no, I'm just going to be forthcoming about it. And let's say you're married to somebody that loses it over that. Like, well, you never, go to 3 days on a vacation with me, or, it just completely comes unhinged. Yeah. What a great opportunity, because that's their level of maturity. And it only damages the marriage if you let it. So what you can do in that space is listen. It's like, this seems upsetting to you. So tell me more about that. What's going on for you right now? What's the story you're telling yourself? And you may find out that your man is feeling rejected.
Mm.
You
Mhm.
know, maybe he's been traveling a lot for work or working a lot of hours, and here you are making time for your friends, but not making time for him, or at least that's his perception. Like, if you don't have that information, you can't respond to it. So, this is opportunity for deepening the connection. And it's one of the things I love about our marriage intensive is that's where couples get, is they go from the stress of conflict being the thing to, oh, there's a conflict, that's a connection opportunity.
Yeah.
What's going on here for you?
Right.
So someone else's emotionality, when we're healed, someone else's
Mhm.
emotionality is opportunity to love and serve and deepen connection. That sounds crazy, but I'm telling you, I see it all the time because that's what God does. That's who he is. And so I would encourage her to dig into her healing and what's got her, what is it, maybe fear, or,
Mm.
like what's in the way that's
Mhm.
causing the thoughts of should I lie,
Mm.
because that's
Mm.
not from the Father,
Right.
right?
Definitely. Definitely. Well, that's good. I love that. All right. Well, thank you again. It's always fun chatting with you about this stuff. So hopefully our listeners got some good tips. What will you do with the information you have today? We again invite you to check out our website and also check out the next episodes on this channel. We think that you'll find more information that is just as fun. All right. Thanks for joining today. We'll see you next time.